All right, welcome back to Market Day Report. I'm still Scott Shullity, otherwise known as the Cow Guy, the Dean of Dairy. Let's talk about what these markets are doing, because that's really all you care about. You don't care what I have to say. Let's take a look at what we've got going on in corn. Let's see what the big board behind me has got in store for us here, and it's some pretty good news across the board, no pun intended. 2 3/4 cents higher in that May corn product to 6.45 3/4. July's up 4.5 cents to 6.27 1/2. So just off of the highs in both of those by one tick. And look at the D's new crop, 8.5 cents higher to 5.68 3/4. Now it's even 9 cents higher to 5.69 1/4. There you go. That's a new high. So corn looks pretty strong. How about soybeans? They look pretty strong as well. We've got, say, between a 12.5 and 15 1/4 cent rally, depending on which month you're looking at in soybeans. May's up 12.5 cents to 14.40 3/4. About 3 cents off the highs. We've got July up 12 3/4 cents to 14.19 even. And go out the new crop, that's 15 1/4 cents higher to 12.88 1/2. That's about 2 cents off the highs out there as well. How about wheat in Chicago? The Chicago wheat market, that's up 15 cents across the board. 15 1/4 cents is the rally in May. 7.03 3/4 is last. That's a tick off the highs. July's up 15 1/4 cents to 7.15 1/4, and that's about a half cent off the highs. So that's a strong board in the Chicago wheat. Let's see if we've got a strong one in the hard red wheat in Kansas City, and we do. 21.5 cents higher in the front. 8.69 1/2 is last. That's a half cent off the highs in May. July's 21.5 cents higher too to 8.55 3/4, and that's about a half cent off the highs there in July. So another strong board when it comes to the hard red wheat. Let's take a look at Minneapolis and the spring wheat. That too is higher, 19.5 cents higher in the May contract. 8.77 even is last. Half cent off the high. It's nice to say that, isn't it? July's up 16 1/4 cents to 8.76, and now just ticked higher. 17 3/4 cents higher to 8.77 3/4, and that's a new high. So there you go. Now I know I can't get too excited about it because there's those of you out there that need lower prices because you're consumers. But I grew up on the producer side of the bed, so I'll pre-apologize if I sound excited. All right, how about 2.88 higher in cotton? That's the May contract to 79.42. Dees is up 228 points to 80.68. Let's bring in our next guest analyst, Todd Horowitz from Bubba Trading in Chicago. Todd, well, here we go. You've been bullish. Maybe this is your comeuppance, right? I mean, coming into today, 6% lower in corn for the year, 6% lower for beans for the year, 14% lower for wheat. It looks like we may have started a decent turnaround here. What do you think?
You know, after looking at the overnight action and looking at the markets, I think they look pretty good. And I think when you look at the commodity space across the board, everything looks pretty good today. And you know, the equities, although higher, have started to give up some of their gains. And I think there's obviously a direct correlation between the two. And I think that equities are ready to throw in the towel. And I think that's going to be very bullish for the commodity space. I think this is what we're watching. And, you know, look, I think we have a big chance here to make a really big move. And I mean, just look at you know, we'll talk about the meats later, but look at the meats and compared to corn right now, and they're still soaring higher. So I think everything looks really good.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've seen some money come out of the stock market and come out of gold and kind of maybe flow back into what we're talking about here as far as the row crops. And you know what, Todd, I mean, it seems as though that we're priced to perfection here, right? There's going to be no problems. Again, I've said it before. We usually kill the crop twice a year, and there just seems to be no buffer in there in case we do have some of that inflation money come back, which seems to have left in the short term. So it'll be interesting to see what the market wants to do if we have some sort of problem when it comes to getting in the field, or if there's anything that happens after that, and or if you suddenly start to see this money come back in from the equities and those other products.
Well, yeah, of course. And I think, you know, listen, the consumer really wants to see higher prices at the wholesale end, because if we don't see them at the wholesale end, then there's a much bigger problem at the retail end later. And I think, you know, you said it, you know, yourself that you're a producer, but the retailer wants to see fair pricing, because if they don't see fair pricing, the prices are going to soar into a hyperinflation type situation later. So it's better to pay fair now than pay a lot more later.
All right, that's a good place to end, and we're going to go away. We're going to pay some bills. We're going to go back and talk with Todd Bubba Horowitz about the livestock after this. All right, welcome back. Now we got to get through these livestock prices to make sure that everything's up to par, and a lot of them are up to par. Let's talk about what we've got happening in live cattle. That's pretty good, isn't it? April's up $1.50, 164.50, 20 cents off the highs. June's up $1.87 to 158.47, and that's 20 cents off the highs there as well. That's live cattle. And we're up between, say, $1.50 and $1.87, $1.90 now across the board there. So that's a strong board. Got to get those arrows, make them green, shouldn't we? Come on. All right, feeder cattle. Let's talk about that. April's up $2.75 to $197.55. That's pretty good going. That's only about, what, 42 cents off the highs. We've got a $3.80 gain in the May to 201.35, so that one, too, is pretty good. And then finally, let's take a look at lean hogs. We'll get back to our guest analyst. Well, we're up between, say, $2.17 and $2.75 across the board. That's the May price. That's $2.17 higher to $87.85. We got a $2.72 rise gain, whatever you want to call it, in the June, the $94.15. All right, let's bring back in Todd, Bubba Horowitz. Todd, we've got some great gains in the meats as well. Is that more of the same? What's happening there?
I think it is more of the same, and especially, you and I always talk about when corn is higher, feeder cattle is usually lower. Well, look what's happening today. We're seeing a pretty solid rally across the board, and hogs, going out in the curve, they look really solid as well. I think that, again, we're starting to see what we've been looking for quite a while, which is the weakness, even though the markets are a little bit higher this morning in equities, and bringing in some strength into the protein complex as well. And I don't see any reason to believe that this is not going to continue. I don't think they're going to soar as much as I think the grains are going to soar, but I do think they're going to continue to drift higher and move towards the all-time highs, certainly in fat cattle.
Yeah, maybe we'll be the benefactor of people taking their money out of that equity market because it's still kind of shaky. And I got some reports here earlier this morning that said the facility that the government opened up to help banks lend and get through this problem in the short term, the banks took up until the week ending, I think March 15th, they took $156 billion out to help bolster themselves up. And that compares to the 2008 Great Financial Crisis. They only took out 112 then. So we're about a third more they took out than they did during the Great Financial Crisis, which might give you just an idea about how safe or not safe those banks are.
Well, again, I would think that if you look at the big picture, we know the banks are over leveraged. And if we would really get a legitimate stress test, you'd find out that these banks are not as solvent or as strong as they believe. But of course, when you have the Fed put behind you and you can go crazy lending out money that is not very good money, you can do that. And of course, right, unfortunately, that brings back the overall bill to the taxpayer, which is not good. But I do think that the money will come out, and I think it will flow into livestock and into grains, and I think it does bode for a very big market coming shortly here, I think.
All right, that's coming straight from the National Bank of Bubba. Thank you very much for being on the show, Todd Horowitz. Thanks, Todd.